All right. Welcome to our 2026 Housing Internship Program Preparing for Offer Day uh, webinar. My name's Spencer Giese, Sears Pronouns. I'm an educational program manager at ACUHO-I. I have the esteemed pleasure of also working with and overseeing the Housing Internship Program, along with an outstanding committee of volunteer leaders who really help this process be great for y'all. This is another of our many webinars we put on this cycle to make sure that you, whether you're a host or a candidate, feel supported and get some great information about the internship program and the next steps in the process. Uh, we are recording this session. I'll be editing it and putting it up on YouTube over the next couple of days. We'll have that up prior to offer day. So even if you missed this or you've got a friend that missed this, we'll get you connected with the information. And without further ado, let's hear from our committee members who are joining us on today's call.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Maldonado Jr. I use the he, series pronouns. I currently serve as a hall director at the University of Rhode Island, and I'm also the Housing Internship Program chair. Fun fact, I was an intern and I supervised an intern. So good times to be on both sides. Kick it over to Caleb.
Hello everyone. My name is Caleb Scott. I'm an RD here at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, in Minneapolis. And I also was an intern a couple years ago, about 4 years ago, almost at this point, which was wild to think.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Kyle Tanner. I go by Justin Kyle. My pronouns are he, him, his. I serve as an assistant director of residential life at UMass Amherst. Back in my day, I was a perpetual intern and did that 3 years in a row and loved my time.
Hi everyone, my name is Debbie Puglisi, a she, her pronouns. I'm a residence hall director at NYU. I was an intern in the summer of 2017 at Coastal Carolina University. NYU hosts interns, but I don't directly supervise any of them, but we do have some on campus every summer.
Awesome. Thank you all. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the offer process and what that kind of looks like for host and candidates alike. The other main things we're going to talk about how to respond to those offers, whether you want to accept or decline them, how to make those informed decisions, and then also managing that decision with confidence.
And before we dive into that, I just wanted to share a little bit more about where we're at in the program. So first of all, we're at 399 candidates at the program right now. So we're waiting on number 400 to register, maybe even today. I believe it'll happen. And we have over 400 openings for internships that are available in our program. Um, and thank you to all of you who are submitting many, many applications for internships that interest you. We've had nearly 3,500 applications submitted in our system. So y'all do the math. I'm not about to do it, but you can kind of understand on average how many internships each candidate is taking a look at. As you think about, as you, the candidate, have you applied to as many as you want to or think you should, et cetera? We can use numbers to average those out. But there are more opportunities out there than there are candidates to pick them up. But it is pretty close. It'll be competitive processes, especially for some of those really outstanding internship opportunities. So get ready. We're excited. Hopefully your interviews have gone well. And at this point, you're feeling that sense of nervousness, but excitement as offer day is just around the corner. Offer day is next Tuesday, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Uh, and I know David's going to touch on this a little bit more, but just know that most likely that first offer is going to come on a telephone call to you. That just seems historically like the way that our host sites connect with our candidates using the phone number that you have on file to reach out. So if it's a number you're not used to seeing next Tuesday, think about picking that up. Um, we do ask that host sites give our candidates 24 hours to make a decision. And even if you don't receive an offer next week, even if you're a host site that doesn't fill your spot next week, just know that our application and interview process continues to be a rolling process moving forward from March 3rd. So at any point after that, you can apply, you can interview, and you can receive an offer from an internship site. There will be a second wave of offers that go out where about 2 weeks after offer day, I'll work with host sites and candidates that are still looking for opportunities and connections and work to bridge the gap between those interested parties and host sites seeking interns. So don't worry, we'll continue to be supportive in the process to help you find a great opportunity for the summer. Additionally, we are very, very strict about making sure that offers are not made prior to 1 p.m. on Tuesday, March 3rd. I'll tell you right now, if you're a candidate and you are receiving offers from schools and pressure from schools to accept an offer for that Tuesday offer date, please reach out to me. You've all received emails, I'm sure, in the system from me, and I'd really like to support you in that process. And we really encourage our hosts to be patient and also be ethical and be great role models in the field as we wait for offer day to arrive on Tuesday, March 3rd. And just before I pass it over to the committee, I'll just share a little bit about what that offer process looks like for our host sites and overall. Um, in the positions that host sites have posted in our portal, they will have a list of applicants. And on offer day, they'll be able to go to their list of applicants, open the application of the candidate they wish to offer to, and then click the offer button. Someone must have applied for position in order to be offered the position. And a position is only an official ACUHO-I internship if it is offered and accepted in our system. So yes, you might receive that initial phone call that offers you the opportunity. I know our committee is going to tell you this. Don't say yes right away unless it's like you've got to have it and you knew you were a yes already. Typically would say take some time and think about it. That offer needs to come through in the system as well. If they've verbally offered it to you, but they've not sent you the offer in the system, it's not a true offer through the ACUHO-I process, and it cannot be binding. Really let us help as your third party to make sure that folks stay true to their commitments, both as candidates who accept offers from hosts and hosts who make offers to candidates. And with that, I'm going to pass over to the committee to talk a little bit more about the accepting and declining of an offer.
Thank you, Spencer. So, similar process, you're going to kind of log on to the system and you'll get notified if there's an offer pending your approval or decline. So, again, if you are getting that phone call, like take the time to really consider like, is this your top school? So, in past webinars, we talked a little bit about utilizing a spreadsheet to keep track of the positions you're really interested in and try to make a top three before offer day. Now is a really good time to look at your top few and determine if this school calls me, am I ready to actually verbally accept on the phone? Or is this something I want to think about until my number one or number two school reaches out to me? Transparently, even when I was in the process of waiting for an internship, every random phone call that came up on my phone that day, I was answering. Stepped out of class, stepped out of work, stepped every time my phone rang, I was answering it. And needless to say, it was a lot of spam calls that I accepted that day. So keep in mind that as much as this institution may be your first pick, they may have other picks as well. So, and those other picks may say no. And once they say no, it starts to go down the list. And if you're second on their list, they're going to call you next. So just as you have 24 hours to decide, so do the other candidates that are also getting notified about potential offers. So when you go into the system, you'll see the offer, you'll hit accept or decline. That is the binding moment. That is the moment where you're like, this is something that I've accepted to do. And as paraprofessionals in the field, like we ask even from the committee standard to, if you are going to accept, to follow through on that. Don't accept to accept and wait for another school to send you another offer and accept that. That is very bad. Please do not do that. So once you are fully accepting an offer, that means you will be removed from other host positions. So they can't choose you because you've already accepted that offer. And now we're going to talk a little bit about some key points to clarify before you're making that offer decision. Debbie?
Yeah, so as David said, you want to kind of have a little bit of idea of like what your some of your top choices are and what you're accepting, and then also want to make sure that you're aware of as you're making that decision and as you're accepting these offer, some of these important components of the role. So it's it's an internship, it's a job. Everyone wants to know what are they getting paid? What does that structure look like? Are you paid hourly? Are you paid a lump sum throughout the summer? And when does that, hit your account? All of those important things are something that you should be aware of as you're accepting. What does your housing accommodations look like? And considering anything that's important to you there, are you sharing an apartment with other people? Um, can you have guests in the apartment? Major things that would really like impact you and your decision of accepting the role, or things that you should clarify ahead of time. Is a meal plan part of your compensation? And if so, what does that look like? Your program dates. There are a variety of start and end dates to internships, and I know that you all have to navigate what that looks like with your academic year institution. So just confirming that you can arrive and depart in a time that also works for your academic year commitments. Who are you reporting to? Who's your supervisor? What is their title? Is there any assistance that they can offer you with travel? Whether that be picking up from the airport if you're arriving somewhere and don't have a car, whether that be providing parking on campus, as is mentioned beneath that, any of those important notes that you need to know before you show up and arrive to your internship, and also things that'll help you make an informed decision of looking at the totality of the role that you're accepting.
Thank you, Debbie. So now, if you are a host in the space, we want you to kind of think a little bit about what happens when the candidate you chose says no. Bummer, I know that was your top pick. However, as you can see, there are 399 candidates out here who are all wonderful and could deliver great experience for that institution. So make sure that you go back to the pool, you look at the people that you had already interviewed, and just kind of see about where those individuals are in the process. And like Spencer said earlier, he works really hard after offers go out to connect host institutions with candidates who didn't get their first or second pick. So please keep in mind that we are very intentional about supporting you in this process, and we want to make sure that if they say no or yes, we are here to support either way. But if they do say no, it's time to go back to the drawing board and look for some other qualified candidates. So now I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the committee here to kind of talk a little bit about their thoughts on making their choice, as well as how do they feel waiting? Because I'm sure show of reactions in here. If you are anxious or nervous, please send a reaction. Yeah. And you're not alone. We all were in that position. So I'm going to turn it over to these wonderful human beings to talk a little bit about their thought process and the waiting game. We'll kick it over to Caleb first, and then we'll just go down.
I knew he was going to do that. Funny enough, David and I went in the same cohort, and we indeed got calls at the same time. AKA while we were sitting at lunch together. That was fine. So a crowd at dining hall made us have to tell them one moment I need to step out. Again, my name is Caleb. I indeed did an internship. I did my internship at the FTCU in Florida. I had a really good time. Had a great supervisor. And so I think just taking your time. My very first call was indeed exactly at 12 o'clock from Texas Tech. Um, 12 o'clock their time, 1 o'clock my time. And so that was a little nerve-wracking. I was in a one-on-one with my supervisor. And so I was just like, one moment, I know we're in a conversation, but I need to take this phone call. And so maybe scheduling some time with the supervisor could be nice. It was really nice for me because then if I did get a few calls, I could process with her in the actual moment. And don't be afraid to say, like, hey, I need 24 hours, especially if you have a certain school that you're like, hey, I really want this one school. Because again, like David has said, uh, some people will get multiple offers. And so take your time, see what offer you have, and then still just be very diligent to then get back to those people. So then they can also move on to their other candidates they are looking out as well. And then again, just ask those clarifying questions of like, how will I get there? What amenities are there for me? Will I be living with other people? Am I living by myself? Do I need to bring bedding? Like all those different things to really help you know where you're going and making the right decision as well. And that's really about it. And on to Debbie.
Kick it over to you, Debbie.
So I'm a very anxious person by nature, so obviously a process that I felt determined like so many things and had a really specific time frame. I was super on edge. I the decision day for me came on a day that we had our department meetings, and so I also felt like I had given myself additional pressure of having some sort of update to give my entire department when I walked into a room with like both my peers who were going through the same process and then all of the area coordinators who I had probably annoyed by asking 1,000 questions and for their thoughts and their input throughout the like month before that. And so I was very lucky to get a call before that meeting and be able to go in with an offer from one of my top schools. I was also doing the NOTA process and the ACUHO-I process at the same time. And so I also was trying to figure out like which was my top choice, what between like those two processes and between roles within it, and had a good sense of that getting the phone call. I asked for that additional time again because I wanted to make sure I had as much information as possible to make that decision. Um, I also don't know if this is a great practice, so like edit this out, Spencer, if I shouldn't be saying this, but I know that people in my cohort and I also like if we had another program that was really high on our list that I reached out to say like, hey, like I'm still really interested, wondering if you can share an update that also helped me know like, okay, say like school A was one that I was really interested in, making sure like they're not going to call me at, 10 minutes after I accept this other role and having like just a little bit of sense of that, which I know some people in my program did with their like absolute top choice. So um kind of went through all of those processes that day and then reached out the next day and confirmed the role. My supervisor of my internship and I talked about this later, where he was like, "You really like kept us waiting, and I really expected that call to be a no, but knew like from that process was like I learned probably just as much about you in that as I did in the interview of how you were gonna like think through something, weigh all of your options." Um, and then we also joked that my co-intern, she and I were very similar throughout the summer, but he was like, I don't think I got the words out before Haley accepted the role. And you were like, what is the exact time that I need to call you back? And both of us, I think, were great interns throughout the summer. It didn't, we talked about it in a very joking manner. It didn't affect how he thought of me in the role, which I think was also something that I simultaneously was nervous about was what does it look like if I'm weighing all my options and taking this time, are they going to think I'm not interested and all of those components. So all of that to say that I obsessed about it for the month before the 24 hours of this process. And all of it worked out really well. I think that for me, knowing that I had thought through all of those components made me really positive that I had made the right decision and that like I wasn't going to be thinking what if or like looking at other offers or anything after I had accepted that and I had a great summer experience and wouldn't have made a different choice. So um, definitely understand all the anxiety that's probably floating in the room, but hopefully it'll all work out for everyone.
What's meant for you won't pass you by. And just to echo or I don't know, reinforce something that Debbie shared. This is such a micro, like job search, great training, great example of what it will be like in the future when you apply for and accept a full-time role that's a super, you know, big transition, big commitment. This is great to have an internship opportunity where you can find out what you're like as an interviewer, find out what it's like to receive an offer, think of those questions to ask, even learn things you wish you'd do differently in the future. We love that kind of short-term opportunity where even if you make a bad choice, even if the internship you accept isn't what you hoped it would be, it's very short term. And, I would say most of us can do something in the short term, even if it's not our favorite, knowing that at the end of that, we're going back to our campus, or we're going to a grad school program, etc. So yes, in that practice of an interview portion of a process, you receive that offer, communicate to those other schools that you might be in the running with. Communicate to those schools that would have been your absolute favorites. Hey, I've received an offer from another school. I've got 24 hours. I'm very curious to learn where I'm at in your process. You were a top school for me, and if there's an opportunity, I'd be very interested. That's what you can do. You can communicate and find out what their response is. Their response might be, thanks, no thanks. We've got our candidate. Or it might be, oh, we've got an offer out. You're our next choice. And then you're in a tough spot. And that's, the saying yes or the waiting and hoping. Um, there's an old adage, I can't say what it means. A bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Like, you've got an opportunity locked in. It might be more valuable to you than playing the wait and hope game and hope that that next school comes forward. It's tough. It's dicey. It's exciting, nerve-wracking, all the fun emotions.
Thank you, Spencer. Turning it over to Justin Kyle.
Oh gosh, reaching back into the memory banks. Um, I would say all my peers have like mentioned really good points. I think what's important to not only think about yourself and to set yourself up for success, but think about like how are you are also thinking about the other side. So as someone who has made offers to various candidates, and unfortunately I don't think folks understand the gravity of the situation, right? This is, while the term professionalism is loaded and has a lot of intersectional context to it, I think there's a way in which one can convey their sincerity, interest or non-interest in a process. So when you are like navigating these offers, make sure that you understand that when you accept an offer, like that's because you've weighed the full situation. And just because you get another offer a day or two later doesn't mean you should necessarily change that thought process because you made the best decision what you had at the time. So just be mindful of that. What are your non-negotiables? There's more applications than there are applicants, and then there are roles. I know that some of you probably took time, really wanted to make sure you had an opportunity or experience, but perhaps you're at the part of the process where you're like, I don't know if this is probably the place for me. So like be real with yourself. And once you get that offer that comes in that you're like, this is my offer, move forward with your process and kindly like bow out of things you need. And last but not least, I would say remind you folks that just be aware of like geographics. Shout out to my colleague David. I can't help but to remind folks Rhode Island is a part of the United States. You don't need a visa to be there. It is not an actual island unless you go to the parts of Rhode Island that's an island. So you don't need to ask things of like, do you need a visa or how do you get onto the island? So, just basic things like that. Google Maps it.
Thank you all for your knowledge and wisdom. And now we're going to turn it over to you all. Please feel free to ask us any questions you have about what's going on in your search or just any thoughts you have that we can help support you through. And you can also put it in the chat too. Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, it would have been too much to type. Thanks for hosting this session, guys. I have a really quick question in terms of like how to bring up a possibility of like negotiating your start date. I know a lot of internship sites talked about flexibility in terms of when you could come onto campus, when your internship can actually begin, and extending dates and closing dates. Like, how do you navigate that conversation? And is it something to do when you're bringing, like, when they might bring it up in the offer, or should this be something that's done afterwards if you like accept an internship site?
I can I would say it's both. Because one, you want to make sure they understand like you are gonna like if you're gonna accept it, that you're accepting it based on these dates that you have available. Most schools understand, like especially with the ACUHO-I specifically, that a lot of these students are in student affairs programs, and like some people are also like GCDs or graduate assistants, and so they have to go back a little bit earlier. And so just really making sure like you voice that and like make sure they understand that, and then once you do officially get that official like offer letter, or if it's like through HR and things like that, that you remind them of like, hey, these are the exact dates. Like, is this still good on your end? And so then that way they can make sure they're also being reminded, because they're also still working full-time jobs. Some of us are getting ready for closing, even though it's just February. Closing is indeed coming up very quickly. And so just keep reminding them. And so I would say, yeah, it's a both. So it's during the conversation and also after as well.
We got a question in the chat here. How would you recommend responding to an institution that has reached out this week asking where they stand in your consideration?
That's a really sneaky way to follow the protocol, the rules, and find out that they're floating. They're what would we call this? They're seeing if you'll let them know that they're a top school, and you know, I think you could be vague, but also let them know. Like, I mean, you're one of my top schools, versus, I mean, it's an opportunity I'm interested in. Like, unless it's a door you want to fully close and be like, actually, upon all my interviews, it's not a high interest of mine, but you can keep it purposely vague where you can give a positive answer without saying, "Hey, I'd accept that offer," because it's not an offer, and just know, I mean, if they sent that message to you, they probably sent it to a few people to make sure they feel like they could get a yes out of their first offer. It's probably a it's probably a host site that's done this a few times and probably lost out on a candidate in the past. They wish they would have offered to sooner, but they made an offer to someone else who didn't say yes to them on day one. They're being strategic. Um, so you can be strategic right back. I would just say vague positivities about how you feel if you feel positive about that opportunity. Um, and certainly, Ashley, if you want to send me an email, let me know what school that was. I'm happy to also have a chat with them anonymously. Um, I'll edit that out of the video. Also, to Caroline's question about accepting offer, being removed from the portal, etc. So when you accept an offer in the portal, so you fully accepted and it's an official acceptance, which this is how the process works. It's offered in the system. You hit accept. Once you do that, that position is eliminated for everyone who applied for it other than you, which is great. So no one is still pestering them to, hey, I really want that opportunity. And they're like, we already picked Caroline. Sorry. So they don't have to worry about more correspondence. So for a host site, it's great. And then for you, rather than you having to notify every school you applied with, unless you wish to, you will show up as accepted other in their list of candidates. Now, certainly if you had a top three and you received your number one, but you want to, uh, build a great relationship or continue a great relationship with those other sites, be like, hey, I just want to let you know I was really impressed by your process, really enjoyed meeting you. Unfortunately, I've accepted another role. Hope we could be in touch in the future. It's a small field. I think you've probably heard that. If you've not, it's a small field. You never know who you're going to bump into again in the future. So be cordial, be polite, be communicative. So yeah, I mean, But if you accept that other offer, it'll just say you accepted an offer in the system. So the other host sites should not be reaching out to you. And I have to tell you right now, let it be very clear. You accept that offer, you're done in the process. I mean that in the most positive way. You're no longer searching, you're no longer fielding offers, you're no longer considering offers. You have accepted an offer, your word is your bond, and you're done in the process. And then you can start thinking about your move dates and what that internship looks like in the summer, etc. Never, ever, ever go back on your word of accepting an offer and then 2 days later saying, actually, no thanks. And then we also have a question from Taylor about how do you recommend asking what the process to bring in ESA is? By asking the question, I mean, ask the question. Uh, if you'd like to be, uh, oh, that's a really, Justin, I really liked what you wrote in the chat. Um, if you would, oh, wow, Justin's killing it. Whatever Justin said it goes. But yes, I was going to say something along the same lines. Every school's got an ESA process, so either they have it or they don't. Find out. And if you want to wait till someone offers you to have that be one of the questions that you ask after they've offered, sure. If you want to be proactive and email some of your top choices right now and just ask them where they stand in that process, you sure can. Up to you. But I mean, from schools I've worked with, it's either they have an ESA process or they don't, and there's not a lot of gray area there. To the question about two offers being extended, it is super courteous to let the place that you're not selecting know that you're not selecting them. The sooner you can offer rejection to a host site, the sooner they can offer their next candidate. If you eat up that entire 24-hour time period and you ghost them, they will have missed out on their top candidates. So you have burned a bridge and you've also, frustrated them because you didn't accept the offer. You don't have to accept an offer, but if you're going to turn it down, just turn it down. That allows them to move on in the process. A host site in our system can only offer as many internship spots as they have open positions. So let's say, Caleb is at Minnesota and Caleb has one opportunity to offer, and Caleb makes that offer to David in the system. Caleb Caleb's hands are tied, cannot do anything else in the system until either David accepts or declines that. So if you want to milk the clock and wait as long as you can to make that yes decision, totally hear that. But if it's going to be a no, the sooner you can say no, the more beneficial it's going to be for the host site that you're saying no to. And it's okay to say no. Just do it in a timely fashion. Great. Well, for those of you joining us live, boy, Justin, Kyle Tanner, just dropping knowledge and text for you to copy and paste into emails in the future. If you are watching the recording, this will be in the transcript, I believe. So probably want to grab that.
How appropriate is it to possibly negotiate an hourly rate?
Great question, Anna. In this one, it should be posted. And I would say if it's a stipend that's posted, if it's an hourly rate that's posted, these are non-negotiable opportunities, which is great for you to know and for them to know. If this was a full-time job, you might, a future full-time job, there might be the opportunity to negotiate a little bit. But these internships, I will say this is not the place to practice negotiation in terms of salary or compensation. That is pretty clear cut across the board. It is really nice, and you can all correct me and send me a message if I'm in, if you've seen differently. In like the higher ed jobs world of higher ed postings, there's so many that don't have a salary listed. And I think for us folks who do job search from time to time, that's really frustrating. And something beautiful about the internship program is every salary compensation, it is listed. We have really made sure that our host sites are posting whether it's an hourly rate, a stipend rate, what kind of housing you're receiving, what kind of meal plan, etc. You really should be able to see the entire package of what you'd receive from the postings here. To Ashley's question in the chat about resources if you are flying to an internship site. Um, Again, that is a great question to bring up. I think talking about if the apartment is furnished or the living space is furnished. Um, Revisit the postings as well. We do have a question on every posting that we have hosts fill out, and it's something along the lines of, is there travel assistance provided by the host site? There are some host sites that'll say, hey, we'll compensate up to $500 for travel. There's others that say no. But that is something that we added to the app, to the host posting a few years ago, and I think that's been really helpful for candidates. And if y'all on the call have other insight on that, feel free to jump in.
I'll definitely say when I went for my internship, they had all the furniture. They just didn't have anything for it. So, didn't have any sheets or bedding or realistically any silverware, pots, pans, things to cook with. So, it was a little hard day one, but I was in Seattle, so I could just walk up the road to Target and get all the things I needed to get. But again, recognizing that I had the funds to do so is important. So, like, feel free to also be very transparent with your internship site and being like, hey, like, is this stuff going to be provided? Because otherwise, I can't get that right away. And then maybe they can work with camps and conferences to see about like optional bedding on campus that they can provide for you temporarily. These are some awesome questions. Thank you all. Any others?
Well, good news. If anything comes up the next few days, you've got the ability to email us. We also have our ACUHO-I customer service chat, those purple chat boxes in the lower right-hand corner of all the web pages that you visit on the ACUHO-I websites. So if you ever need real-time help, that is there for you. I can tell you I'll be answering many a live internship question the next week and the next weeks to come. And I'll do my best, and I know our committee will do the best to try to help you find placement. If something doesn't go great for you on offer day, take heart. There will be more opportunities out there for internships after the fact. Uh, I will say, if you're a clapping emoji type person, if we could give our panel a shout out, whether in the chat or on, there you go. I see some clapping hands. Great insights today, friends. And those of you who were intern marathoners once upon a time and did 3 in a row, that's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. And if you're only going to do one internship ever, and this is your one summer to do it, I hope you have a great internship. So, more to come, more stories to share, and we will certainly be in touch.